on par with maybe some of the bigger players, or try to get yourself on par with some of the bigger players. This evening, I will also be reasonably quick as well, so I don't want to stand up here speaking for an hour or so. I'll keep it reasonably short. I think Dorda's said to me about half an hour, so I'll try to keep it to that. But what I'm going to look at is kind of what are the kind of things that you should be looking for when it comes to benchmarking your site, and actually what is benchmarking? What is it that you're going to be comparing yourself against your competitors? I'm also going to just point you towards some of the free tools that you can use. Some of you have probably used these tools already, but there are some tools out there that some of you might not be aware of that can kind of give you some additional information about your competitors, but also about yourselves and your websites. And then we're going to look at some of the things that pretty straightforward, pretty obvious, things that you can actually do to improve your own rankings and maybe start to catch up those competitors that you have. At the end, Dorta has a couple of action points which are to do with the e-champions. So those of you that are e-champions, she'll have a grueling list of things for you to do between now and the next session, I believe. No?
Not grueling.
Okay. I saw the list. I thought it was pretty grueling. Okay, just to kind of give you an idea of what I'm talking about here with benchmarking, it's basically measuring how you're doing against your competitors, what your competitors are currently doing to get their sites up the ranks in Google, and what you can do to kind of match what they're doing, or sometimes obviously want to overtake what they're currently doing. A lot of what SEO is about is generally about one or two things, or two of two things. It's either on-page or off-page SEO, things that you can do on your website and things you can do off your website to drive traffic to the website. So a lot of the things that I'll be looking at here are one of those two categories, either on-page or off-page SEO. So when we talk about on-page SEO, it's parts of your website, things like, for example, anchor texts that are actually inside your website, page titles and that sort of thing that are inside your website, things that you can do something about. And then we'll also take a look at the off-page stuff, which is the inbound links and how people link to your website and making sure your sites are in certain industry related directories and that sort of thing. So there's this on-page and off-page type of content we're going to have a look at. One of the things that Dorta has assured me, or Alan and Dorta have assured me, is that by now you should know what your key phrases are. So what are the key phrases you're actually competing for in industry on Google? So if you have a business that sells, for example, web training, it's one of the things that we do, you know what your keywords are. So for example, the Access Centre, we're a centre in Nottingham, do web training. So what we do is we have obviously targeted key phrases like, for example, web design training in Nottingham, or Dreamweaver training in Nottingham, and that sort of thing. So we know what our key phrases are. So you should all know what your key phrases are. Is there anyone that has no idea what their key phrases are? Okay, it's not an easy thing to identify. It does require a little bit of work, and it's not always obvious as well. You might have a shop that sells flowers, for example, and you think, well, flowers are the key phrase I should go for. It's not always that obvious. If you're not too sure, the lady to speak to, once again, is Dorta. She'll be able to help you identify what some of those key phrases should be. But once you know your key phrases, it's really a job of getting yourself to the top of Google for those key phrases. Now, you might have a whole set of key phrases. You might not just have one set. You might have 4 or 5 or even 10 or 15 different key phrases that are important to you. And for each of those key phrases, you should go through the processes that we're going to look at here. So it's quite a time-consuming job, but it's something that could reap a lot of benefits to you. So what we're going to have a look at is kind of how many sites are actually going for the same key phrases that you're interested in. Okay, and once we've identified the sites that are kind of at the top of those key phrases, we're also going to have a look at how they got to the top of those key phrases, because that's important to be able to identify what it is exactly that's got them to the top of Google for those key phrases that you're interested in. Because quite often you can copy those techniques that they've used, or you can actually better those techniques as well. Sometimes you can identify really bad coding in the website, or you can identify sloppy keyword usage and that sort of thing, and you can quite easily get above those websites. So we're going to kind of look at how you get above those types of websites that are using the same key phrases as yourself. Dorta has put together, I'm blaming Dorta a lot today, Dorta has put together a case study for me. She's literally given me 2 websites to have a look at. She said, go and have a look at these 2 websites. Don't choose your own. Look at these websites here. She's put some stats together, which I've then looked through and reviewed. And she's literally said to me, well, here's one of our e-champions. And she got me to guess originally which one was which. And here's one of our e-champions. Can you go and have a look at what they're doing with their keywords and perhaps give us some insight into where they can maybe better those keywords? And I believe this one here is the e-champion website. dentaldesktop.co.uk. I'll be good. Okay. And apparently the industry leader, which is Tab Dental, I assume, because they do come #1 for the key phrase dental software, which I assume then is your keywords of choice. Okay, so we have had a look at the 2 sites and how they compare with one another. First thing we started to do is actually just go into Google and type in dental software to see what comes up. Because if you're typing in dental software into Google, that's probably what your audience is typing into Google as well. There's all kinds of other tools we can use to analyze the site, but generally you want to be able to do what your audience are going to be doing as well. They're going to be typing in dental software, trying to find your service. So dental software went into Google, and what we found is Tab Dental were at the top of Google for those keywords, and we basically kept on looking and looking and looking until we found Dental Desktop, and it was on page 3. Yeah? But I believe it's rising quite quickly. Yeah?
There's a lot of fluctuations on Google at the moment, and they've done some big changes, so it is slightly all over the shop at the moment, but it will stabilize with time.
As you make changes, it will move up and it will move down. And obviously, the more changes that you make when it moves up, you want to continue making those changes. The changes you make when it moves down, don't want to make those again. So basically, the first thing you should do, if you are going for a key phrase, is identify where you currently are and identify where you want to be. Now, saying I want to be #1 is a little bit unrealistic a lot of the time, especially if it is a key phrase which is very, very popular, like dental software. You take a look at the number of searches there are for dental software and the number of results found for dental software, it's quite a competitive field. So you need to say to yourself, well, realistically, where could I be when it comes to dental software? And hopefully what you want to do is you want to try to get onto the first page, somewhere on the first page, hopefully on the top half of the first page. That's where roughly about 95–99% of the traffic comes from, the top half of the first page. First results, great, but top half is most of the time quite good enough. Along with just typing into Google, you can also use tools like Google's Webmaster Tools. And if you've got a website and you're serious about SEO, what you should have is a Google Webmaster account. So you should have your site registered with the Webmaster Tools. One of the new features of the Webmaster Tools, the Webmaster Tools have recently been upgraded. There's a lot of new stuff in there. It's starting to look a little bit like Google Analytics as well. So those of you that have used Google Analytics, it's starting to become a little bit familiar looking as well. But what the Webmaster Tools will be able to tell you is currently what Google sees as your keywords. So your key phrases, you might look at your website and go, oh, these key phrases here, I didn't realize those were actually my key phrases. These are the ones that Google is currently picking up hits for your website. So you can see that in Google Webmaster Tools. Along with that, how many impressions, in other words, how many views of your link have actually been made, as well as how many times people have actually clicked through onto your link rather than your competitors' links. So you can see that. You can also tell from here what you're actually ranking for in Google for these phrases. So for example, us as web designers in Nottingham, web training in Nottingham, we're looking at, for example, things like web design courses Nottingham, and we can see quite quickly from Google Webmaster Tools that we average about position 1 or position 2 for those keywords. So rather than having to search through Google to find your position, Google Webmaster Tools will actually tell you exactly what position you average at, which is quite useful. And also show you other keywords that you might not even have thought about that people are finding your website through. So, for example, we get found on our website for Top Gear. Top Gear's Cool Wall. The reason for that being is that Jonathan Green, who worked with us, did a Cool Wall article a couple of years ago. And a lot of people actually land on the Access Center website because of that Cool Wall article. It's not something we're really interested in, and we don't probably get any business from it, but it's interesting just to see that we actually get those visitors coming into our website.